Hello, my name is Lucia Dore, and I am host of the podcast Why Learn Business English for learnbusinessenglish.net, the place to go to learn how to become an entrepreneur and for a comprehensive and engaging course for learning business English online. Today, I would like to introduce Professor Susan Ford, who will be speaking about the importance of effective communication in business. She is also co-founder of Powerful Communication Associates, a company that provides communication training and coaching for people who want to enhance and hone their public speaking skills. Good day, Susan. Now,
hello, Lucia.
why is it important? Tell me, why is it important to be able to communicate in all types of business?
Well, it's an opportunity, I think, to bring your ideas to life. Print and voice have very different impacts on the brain. And with the voice, you can add your passion, your personality, and your belief in what you're saying. And it helps you to make relationships, whereas a document doesn't.
Now, you mentioned in there that it's the opportunity to bring something to life. What strategies then would you recommend to communicate well in business? What can you bring to light? For example, if, I don't know, you're in computing.
Well, the easiest strategy, the best strategy is to practice. I know this sounds very obvious, but practice out loud. So often people think it through in their heads and then perhaps say these thoughts for the first time. It's the parallels with sport run right the way through. It's a holistic skill. It's physical, it's intellectual, and it's emotional. And I think you need to plan for speech and not print. The ear responds differently to the eye. And it's keeping the spontaneity, knowing perhaps what you want to say, but not necessarily the exact words you're going to use. Keep the thinking fresh behind the words and go for an opening that has impact, a story or narrative line through the delivery and something powerful at the end. Practice.
Yeah.
Practice. It's one of the skills in life where you can go on getting better as you get older, which isn't always the case in things like sport. But and it's an eclectic skill. So watch other people, see what works.
Do you think that because it's such a holistic skill that people underestimate it's important in business? They worry about how clever they sound rather than and what they say rather than how they sound.
Oh, I think that's absolutely so. I think it's profound. People over prepare. They pack all sorts of not all, but frequently pack all sorts of impressive data, statistics, information. Is the listener really going to remember all that? The person makes, or the voice, if it's on Zoom or if it is a recorded podcast, it's the voice makes the first impact.
So, to what extent then do you think that the power of communication is underestimated by many business?
Well,
in MES, for example, computing.
Well, I would say less now than in the past.
Right.
Years ago, when I first started working in this field, people's one experience, possibly once a year, was to present at a conference, and they would have everything written out and effectively stand up and read an essay. Whereas now, image, presence, engagement, and performance are all rated and deemed to be effective. Charisma is a word that is used a lot. The ultimate is to give the impression you are a natural. again, parallels with sport, and it takes a lot of practice to be seen to be natural. But I truly believe that this is a skill which is now going to make the difference in business if you have great communicators giving your message, because people relate to the personality as well as the information.
So it sounds as though it's important to limit what we're saying, as it is not to have too many points
I agree.
on sides.
Anybody who is going to communicate should consider what 3 things they would like the listener or the listeners to take away from the experience. Be this live, be this in a meeting, be this in a large space, be this on a podcast, wherever. They want to think, what are the 3 things they want them to take away? And if you muddy the water, if you put too much information in, then you're possibly going to yeah, then
So you don't want
you're
too
not going to
much
succeed.
information. It's never about too much information. So therefore, who
Clarity
would
of
you
message.
identify as being very good at getting that message across? What role model? Who would be a role model for someone in business?
Well, there's a guy called Matthew Syed. I first came across him when I read his articles in the Sunday Times and in the Times. I then bought a couple of his books and read them, and I was super impressed by the range of his knowledge and his incisive arguments. And then I had the privilege of seeing him at a conference and was so impressed by the way in which he stood uncluttered by slides, visual aids, and just held the space in the middle of the platform and talked for half an hour freely, seemingly spontaneously. I do emphasize he was well practiced and engaged everybody. He knew the difference between the language you use for print and the language you use for live performances, for the ear. And he has mastered both of them. I should like to add, it's super impressive this, he was also England's, he's an immigrant, or his parents were immigrants. He went to Oxford, but he was also England's #1 table tennis player as well. So obviously he is a multi-talented gentleman.
Really interesting. So what you were saying, it is really, you don't want to cram too much into anything. It is what you say that's important.
I would say it's a
But
combination.
how you say it.
Yes, I would say it's a combination. This sounds a bit slick, but it's absolutely true, between style and substance. Obviously, you've got to have something worth saying, but also the way in which you say it makes all the difference. If something is too packed with information, people stop listening. And let's face it, there are so many distractions nowadays where people can disengage and look at their phones or whatever. It is a fact of life. Whereas if it's all personality and no matter, then you think a bit of a lightweight or a bit of a show off. It's getting this balance between the way in which you communicate and what you have to say. And that is a skill which you can go on honing and developing during your life, your professional life, and yeah, forever really.
So do you think that everyone thinks they can communicate now because there's social media? Do you think that the importance of effective one-to-one communication has been lost because of social media?
Well, that's very interesting. I don't know that I'd actually ever thought of that, but I think possibly there is a danger of this. I would have said that it is ever more important to have authoritative voices who can communicate with clarity and vision to cut through all the noise that is there on the internet. So many people who think they know everything. I think it's just muddies the waters. So I would have
So
said, go
in
on.
a way, it's a bit like writing. I mean, everybody thinks they can write because they write on social media.
So true.
So maybe everybody thinks they can speak because they speak on the telephone.
Or I have to say,
Well, then no longer do they even speak on the phone.
yes, or perform. Somebody gets famous for looking pretty in a photograph, and all of a sudden they're cast in a film. Absolutely. Absolutely. These skills need to be respected and learned and developed. And the word oratory brought back into the English language, it is a skill. You're absolutely right. People just think, well, I can write. It's like saying, I can walk, therefore I can be an athlete. No, that's not the case.
Well, thank you, Susan, for your insights.
Absolute pleasure.
And I'm going to go away and think about what I can do to improve my oratory. I think that's what we need.
Well, I wish you joy. It is extraordinarily satisfying to be able to engage an audience, hold them as you talk, and know that they are listening and responding to what you are saying. It is a privilege to be able to do that well.